Hello, what's up everybody? How is it going? Welcome to another video of tutorial series Learning Laravel from Scratch. I'm your host Anwar Ali and I'm here today with a new topic, and the topic is understanding Laravel's view and some of the basics of blade template. Okay then, so in the last video we covered some of the basic stuffs like creating the migration, running the migration, creating the migration along with the model, and those were the things that we created last time. So today, before starting with the blade template or view, what I want to do is I want you to understand the concept of routes, which is over here, and the concept of controller that we'll be creating shortly. So currently we only have uh, inside controller we only have home controller. So just like home controller, we would like to create a new controller, and we can just call it for now test controller. Okay, so let me just quickly open my terminal. So in order to create the controller inside our Laravel project, what we need to do is, first of all, let us go get inside the project folder, which is inside /applications amps www project. I run the command php artisan make, just like the model, we'll say make controller this time, and after this we'll be giving our controller's name. And for now I would just like to create a controller called test controller. So for Laravel we should write the name of the controller and follow it by capital CONTROLLER control. This is how we create the controller in our Laravel. So this should always be camel casing. The first letter of the controller and the first letter of the name of the controller and the controller itself should be capitalized. So test capital T, controller capital C. After we do this, it will say us controller created successfully. Now if we go back to our Sublime Text and see, you will find a text controller over here. Okay, let me create a function, public function index, just write a hello world over here, echo hello world. Okay, so this is the controller that we just created. We created a function inside the controller, test controller, which is hello world, I mean index, and we printed out hello world inside it. One of the amazing thing about Laravel is that in order to make this controller and function workable, we need to write routes for it. For each and every URL to work in Laravel should have its own routes mentioned inside web.php. So this is an example of route, which says whenever there is a home in the URL after the base URL, and we are trying to browse that URL through get, which means nothing is being posted, nothing is being patched or anything. So just a normal browsing. In that case we use get. It is just like the forms get method and post method. We will have some more types of route in Laravel, which we'll discuss shortly. But just if we have home in the URL, this means home controllers index function. So this is the routes for /home, and this name is just an alias or a shortcut name for this route. So this is a short name for the route. So whenever we want to browse we want to get the full URL, we can just give this name to the route function and it will generate us the full URL, which we'll discuss about later on. But for now you should just take care of this. So this means route get. If there is a home in the URL, this means home controller and index function. So if I just go and type in here home, it will take me to login because I'm not yet logged in. But we will be creating our own routes for test controller. So I'll just copy the same thing, paste it over here. So if I say if there is a test in the URL, this means test controller's index function. So I'll just write test. Now if I try to browse this by typing in test over here, you will see I got hello world, because this, whenever we type something in the URL, it first of all checks if the URL is present in the routes, and it finds it over here. So here is the test, and it checks the controller name and the function name for that URL, which means test controller and index function, and its alias is, let's say, test. Okay, we should not have same alias for two routes, otherwise it will replace it or overwrite it. So for our test controllers index function, we have defined a route index. We can even define our own routes, for example ASD. Let us say if there is ASD in the URL, this means test controller and index function. Let us see ASD, enter, it's saying hello world. So route, I just wrote test over here because it is always a good practice to have naming convention, the name of the controller, name of the route similar to what you are doing. So it is better, good practice to have the naming convention of the URL and make it user friendly. Okay. Similarly, if you see this means that if you type in test, it works. But if we type test controllers index function just like in CodeIgniter, it won't work anymore because we haven't written the route for test/index. But now if we go and write test/index over here, this will work. But test will not work anymore because there is no URL or there is no route mentioned for only test. We can also have multiple routes for the same controller, same function. So let us suppose if somebody, let us create a route first, Control C, Control V, remove this. So if there is a test in the URL, only test, this means test controller index function. And if there is test/index, this also means test controllers index function, and we can say test1 and test2, the name of the routes. So now if you type test, it will work because test means test controllers index function, and test/index, this will also work because this also means test controller index function. So we can have two different routes for the same function and the same controller. Okay, so I hope this is not much complex for you, and so this is an easy way to define a route. We'll deal about the name later on. So for now, test means test controllers index function. Okay, now let us say we want to create another function inside test and name it like public function about. Let's say echo this is about. Okay, now if you type in here about, it will not work because we have not yet defined the routes for about. So what we can do is we can just copy the same route, paste it over here, and just say about, which means test controllers about function, and we can just call this about. Now refresh this, and it is now working. So this was the simple concept of defining routes and defining the control functions inside the controller. And in order to make it workable, each and every function should have its own routes, and after that it will work fine. Okay, so we generally don't echo or print out something inside the URL, rather we load the view from the controller, right? So let us suppose we want to load a view called home inside our index function. So in order to do that, we'll just say return view and give the name of the view. Let us say we would like to create a view called test. Okay, and for this we want to create another view, which will do it later on. For now, let us say return view test. So now this index function of the test controller should return a view. So to create our view, we should get inside our resources control folder, and there is a views folder over here, and we can create our view inside our views folder. So let us create a view called test. Now in order to, since Laravel uses blade template, now our naming convention for the view should be the name of the view .blade.php. Okay, so let us create a new file and call it test.blade.php. So we have created our view file successfully. Now let us try to write something over here. Let us say this is test page and save it. Now as per our routes, whenever we type in test, it should call test controller's index function, and which is here. So test controller's index functions now should return a view called test, which is over here, and inside our test we have written test. This is test page. So whenever we type in test in our URL, now this should show us this is test page, right? So we can see this is test page is now here in our page. So this is how we load the view from our controller using Laravel. There is another concept of view inside Laravel, and unlike in CodeIgniter where we load our header separately, load our footer separately, and load our content separately, while working with Laravel, we generally work with layouts. So if you see, there is another folder called layouts here, and we can create our own layouts and load our content through the view to that layout. For example, let us say if you browse any site, for example, let's say news.kodiary.com. This is something that we are currently working. So if you go to this website, you will see there is a header and there is a footer, okay, which should be repeating in each and every page. So for example, if I'm here in another tab, you will see the same header is on the top and the same footer is on the bottom. If you go to any detail page of the news, you will still see the same header on the top and the same footer in the bottom. So this means there is something that is being repeated in each and every page. That is our header and that is our footer. So this repeating thing, we generally put inside our layouts folder. This means each and every view should share the same layout with the same header, with the same sidebar and the same footer. The only thing that should be changing is the main content of the body, which is in the left side, right? So the image or this title and the description and some similar posts, these are the things that should be changing. Otherwise we should have the same header, same sidebar and the same footer. So in order to introduce this, while we worked in the CodeIgniter, we had written a separate code for the header, separate view file for the footer, and separate view file for the sidebar, and we used to load each and every view separately in each and every views, right? But in Laravel we have a concept of layouts where we create our own layouts and start working on this. So app.blade.php is a default layout that is generated by the Laravel itself. So if you go and see in the app.blade.php layout, you will see that there are some of the, so for example, for the header stuff, we have HTML open, head open, body open, we have some navigations, and finally here this is the part for the main content, and we have div close, body close, everything, right? So let us quickly create our own layout and try to use that in our test blade. Okay, so let us create our new layout, and let's say we want to call it like my layout dot blade dot php. So this is the place where we'll be creating our header, footer, which should be repeating in each and every page. So let us say we have HTML, and my title would be Laravel project. Okay, and inside my body, let us say I want to have a div for header. Let us say this is for header, so I'll just name it header, and let us say I'll just write a code called this is header over here. And we have another div, let us say this is for footer, div close. Let's give a class called footer, and let's say this is footer. And here I want to load the content of my view files that I'm loading through controller. So for example, my test controller is loading the view called test, and inside test we have this is test page, and I want this content to be shown over here in the middle inside paragraph tag. Okay, so this is the place where my content should be shown, and this is the place where my header should appear, this is the place where my footer should appear. So what I generally do is I just place a function called yield here. So we are using Blade templates, so one of the way to call the functions in blade template is placing @ in front of it and call the function yield content. Okay, so this is the place where I want to show the section called content. So yield is a function that actually loads the sections. So I will explain about sections shortly. So in blade template, what we do, we generally create sections inside our view folder, and we load those sections using the yield function in our layout. So right now I'm just creating a function called yield. I'm trying to load the content called section called content. So this section content should be defined inside our test blade. So let's say here, now in order to use this layout in my test blade, what I need to do is I need to extend this layout. So I need to call the function called extends and I need to give the name of the I need to give the path of my this layout, which is my layout.blade.php. So my path is inside views folder I have layouts folder, so I need to get inside layouts and give a slash, which means in blade template we generally denote slash with dot. So I need to get inside layouts and I need to give the name of my layout, which is my layouts. Okay, I'll explain about it. And after that we need to define the content or section that we are loading inside our template or layout. So the name of the section that I'm trying to load is content, right? So I need to define a section called content inside my view file. So section, and since section is a function, I need to define the name of the section inside the bracket. So my section, the name of the section that I'm using in my layout is content. So I need to say this is the section called content, and I want to load my text inside the content. I want to define something like, let's say this is test page. And after this I want to end my section. So in order to end the section, I just need to say end section. Okay, so let's see. I'll explain about this in detail, but let us just quickly see if everything worked fine. So whenever we call test, it says my layouts was not found. So it's not my layouts, it's my layout. So inside my test it is not layouts, it is layout. Okay, now let's try. This is saying this is header, this is footer, and this is test page. It has an extra semicolon at the last because inside my layout I have a semicolon over here, and we don't need semicolon in blade template. You can see this is header, this is footer, and this is the content that I'm sending. So what's happening, let's see. So inside our routes we have said that test means test controller's index function. So it goes inside test controller and it calls the index function, and index function is saying to return the view called test. So it is now checking for the view named test, and it finds it over here, and this test is saying that it wants to extend the layout called layouts called my layout, which is inside layouts folder. So it grabs the content from my layout, which is the layout that I just created, and this layout is expecting a content or a section called content, right? So yield is a function that loads the section which is defined in the view. So this layout is expecting a section called content. So it now searches for the section called content inside test blade or this view. So it finds that the section is defined over here, the section called content is defined over here. So it grabs the content of this section which is over here and copies it and places it inside this place. So what it does is it grabs the content which is defined inside the section and places it over here. So we have this content on the top, this content on the bottom, and this is in the middle. So that's why we got this is header on the top, this is footer in the bottom, and this in the middle. So this is how loading of the views and using the sections in the layouts, so works in the Laravel. Now if you see, let us say I want to use the same layout inside my about function as well. So let us just return a view called about whenever we browse about. So we already have a route for about, which is test controllers about function, and this is test controllers about function, which is loading a view called about. So we need to create a view called about inside our views. So new file, control S, about.blade.php, and since and even this function should also use the same layout. So I need to extend the same layout, extends, and I need to give the path to my layout, which is inside layouts folder dot my layout. Right now I need to define the section which is over here. So this layout which I'm extending is expecting for a section called content, so I need to define a section called content. So let us define it. So section, and the name of my section is content. So for about, I want to place a, let's say I want to have a heading tag, let's say about us, and I want to give a paragraph tag and say this is about us page, and I want to end the section right here. So end section. So now what it does is it grabs the layout. So it is grabbing each and every part from here to here, but instead of this yield content, now it sends the section called content from the view, which is inside my about, from here to here. It will send this content to my layouts, this block. Okay, so heading tag and paragraph tag will appear over here, and it will have this on the top and this on the bottom. So what we should see now is this is a header on the top and a heading tag and a paragraph tag, and this is footer in the bottom, right? So let's try to browse about, and you will see maybe we mistook it somewhere. So inside my about blade, so extends, not intents, so it's extends, right? Let's try to refresh this now. You will see this is header is in the top, this is footer is in the bottom, and the content that we sent was, the section that we sent was about us, head in h1 tag, and this in the paragraph tag. So this is exactly what we got. So this is how we generally work with Laravel's view and Laravel's layout, defining the section and sending the content of that section to the layout, and loading the layout, loading each and every section in the layout. So this is how we exactly work with Laravel's view and controller. So we will be using a new template, maybe a good design of a template, and we will try to create different sections for our template. Maybe a section called header, a section called sidebar, a section called footer, and we can use those sections in our layout. So we will do that in the coming videos, but this was just a basic briefing about the concept of layout and templating, and let's say the view and the controller and the routes. We will learn more about different types of routes, how to define controller in an appropriate way. We'll also learn about how to use the views and blade template in more better way. For example, using how to use if-else conditions using blade template, how to use loops, and how to print out something. So there are various things we need to discuss more, but that was it for today. We will be discussing more on this in coming videos, and I hope you understood the video and you liked the video. And if you did, don't forget to click on like button, subscribe it, comment on it, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with the new topic. Till then, have a nice time. Goodbye.